Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This is Bill Bullock. I'm coming to you live from Biblical Lifestyle Center in Texarkana, USA. Today we're going to talk about something very important, the telltale signs and the serious consequences of choosing darkness over light. Mashiach has said about us and concerning us that those who do not wish to have their deeds exposed choose darkness over light. John chapter 3. I want to talk to you about the telltale signs and consequences that point out when someone has made a choice to choose darkness over light. I have a faithful saying to kick off our discussions on this topic today, and that is this. If you're listening with your ears on, if a person is to prefer and cling passionately to the light, if that is to happen, if a person is to prefer and cling passionately to the light, he or she must first have intimately known and been wounded deeply by the darkness. Let me repeat that for you. It's our faithful saying to start the day and our discussions about the telltale signs and the serious consequences of choosing the darkness over the light. Here's the saying: if a person is to prefer and cling passionately to the light, he or she must first have intimately known and been wounded deeply by the darkness. I also have some questions of some importance that I believe will kick off our discussions today. The first one is, how well do you know the darkness? How have your family and your bloodline and you yourself, how's your community, how has your nation, how has your species in your generation, how has your ecosystem been adversely impacted by the darkness, the encroachment of the darkness? How well do you know the darkness? How much wounding and pain have you suffered from incursions of the darkness? That will determine how likely you are to choose the light. Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what kind of darkness maybe we're talking about. Is it just a metaphor? Are we just talking like in Star Wars or something about the dark side and the side of the Jedi? What are we talking about? No, we're talking about a deep, deep spiritual reality, the deeper wisdom of the Torah. What is darkness? Darkness is called chosek in Hebrew and in the Torah text. Chosek. Chosek is the opposite, on the polar extreme, on the other side of or, which is light. When he said yehi, he said or, let there be light. And into what did he speak? He spoke into choshek, darkness. And all of Torah is really an expansion, expounding upon this initial statement. Choose or over choshek. But you've got to know what choshek means and what it entails and what its pain and its wounding is. You got to know what it causes. You have to know it intimately and see it, the pain it causes to your family, your home, your bloodline, yourself, your soul, your community, your nation, your species, your ecosystem, before you will choose the light. If you do not understand how dangerous the darkness encroachments are, then you will not understand why you must choose the light. Well, what kind of darkness? Choshek, we've said, is the Hebrew word. Choshek means that which is enveloping, consuming, and cloaking you with a sense of numbness and disorder, chaos. It's got a sense of the tohu vavohu of Genesis 1-2, the without form and void, meaninglessness, purposelessness. That's what the power and the darkness of Choshek is. And it's when you get to Choshek, it's not just a darkness without an environmental situation. It's a darkness that creeps within, that gets into you. And then it becomes darkness of thought. Vile passions begin to come forth. Vain imaginations begin to break into your mind. Futile thinking begins to be your pattern. Darkened understanding begins to be your lot. And a reprobate mind. Now I'm taking this language from Romans chapter 1 and discussions of Shaul about what happened to mankind. Darkness enters the mind and begins to corrupt the thought. And again, vile passions, vain imaginations, unclean desires, futile thinking, darkened understanding, and reprobate mind are the results. So darkness within, It comes from darkness without, and darkness without comes inside and causes you to think dark thoughts. Then it comes into your speech, your language, your organs, and your tissues of speech, and you get darkness of speech. Dark sayings, things that are dark, things that are of the disorder, the chaos, things of complaint and murmuring, things of lashon hara, the negative speech. These are the signs, the telltale signs that you have chosen darkness over light. This happens whenever you open your mouth and negativity and fear and vile thoughts come forth and debauchery and all sorts of things come out of your mouth. This is darkness of thought turning into darkness of speech. And darkness of speech reveals something. It reveals that there is deep inside you a darkness of heart, a darkness of emotion, a darkness of mood, a darkness of mind and will, a darkness has permeated you. This is that which we must fear. And then there's a darkness that goes all the way deep into the eternal soul. Now, these are the issues. What is darkness? How well do you know darkness? Have you been burned by darkness? Have you come out of darkness? Well, that is an important question to start our discussions of Parsha Shelach Lecha today, the 37th Parsha of the Torah, Numbers chapters 13 through 15. It's all about this issue of choosing darkness over light. You see, here's the truth. A faithful saying is that the closer one gets to the light, the more tempted more one is to run back into the darkness. So, another question for us to discuss and think about today will be, have you begun to understand what our covenant with the Holy One entails? Do you know what, not just an experience of salvation or deliverance or some sort of a religious experience. Have you begun to understand what being in covenant with the Creator of the universe entails? Have you begun at least to understand and get a grasp on what this out of darkness into glorious light calling of our Creator involves? Have you begun to understand these things? Do you understand the commitment and discipline of the eyes that the covenant calls for and the calling requires? Do you understand the commitment and discipline of the mind and the thought life and the self-talk that the covenant with the Holy One and the out of darkness into glorious light calling require? Have you begun to understand the commitment and discipline of the heart and the emotional self-control that is required by the covenant with the Holy One and with his out of darkness into glorious light calling? Have you begun to understand the commitment and disciplines of the tongue and utterance and what comes out of our mouths and poisons or feeds the earth? Have you understood the commitment and discipline of the tongue and utterance that the covenant with the Holy One requires and the calling of out of darkness into glorious light involves? And finally, have you begun to understand and appreciate the level of commitment and discipline of body that comes from demeanor and body language to deeds, behaviors, and attitudes manifested in the public realm? The commitment of discipline of body that the covenant with the Holy One requires, and the out of darkness into glorious light calling involves. Have you begun to understand these things? It's not just a matter of believing a few doctrines. It's a matter of committing to a covenant and stepping into a calling. So how much, another question could be asked, and it's sort of a telltale sign of whether we've chosen darkness over light, is how much do you love and how highly do you value the redemption and restoration of Eretz Yisrael, the land of physical Israel? How important is the land of Israel to you? How important is the Goy Kadosh calling of the children of Israel to you, the people of Israel, and the lifestyle of the Torah that is called for for Israel? How important are these things in your matrix of priorities and values? Oh, you see, if you love the light, if you run to and cling to the light, these things become the key to releasing of the light into the earth through you. The Goy Kadosh calling of Bnei Israel, the holy nation calling of Bnei Israel is critical, and you should value it greatly and the redemption and restoration of Eretz Israel, of the land of Israel, the Holy Land, from Beersheba to Dan. This land and its redemption and restoration are the key to the eternal, the redemptive plan. So that's a good start, right? We're walking in the light, episode number 37. This is our series for the year, walking in the light. If we're going to walk in the light, we must know where the darkness ends and where the light begins. And we must know where the light fades and the darkness encroaches. Week number 37, Shelach, Lecha, Numbers 13, 1 through 15, 41. Welcome, beloved. Let's talk for a while. Our theme is walking in the light, discovering the secret wisdom encoded in Torah's timeless stories. Torah is a storybook par excellence. Torah is wisdom given in the form of grandfatherly, loving stories to tell us who we are, where we came from, and why we are here, and to warn us of what it is that will derail us and detour us from our mission. The Torah year. We are in the Torah. We live by the Torah according to the times. The Torah year features 7 weeks of increasingly intense testing, and you guessed it, we're in that 7-week period. We just began it last week. The Torah year features these 7 weeks of increasingly intense testing, and we have just begun. Each time around the sun, as temperatures start to rise in the northern hemisphere, we find ourselves searching for living water in 7 parshot, or 7 series of weeks. But Halotka was last week. Shelach Lecha, the second, is this week. Third phase will be Korach next week. The fourth phase will be Hukat, and Balak will be the 5th, and 6th will be Pinchas, and 7th will be Matot Maseh. These are the next 6 more parshot and combinations of parshot in Book of Numbers. The Book of Numbers is our summertime studies guide. And the level of troubles we face in the world each year, this time of year, starts to increase with the heat. The rhetoric of hate ratchets up. The persecution gets intense. Nerves frazzle. Tensions escalate through the roof. It happens to us, but it happens throughout the world. It's darkness encroaching on the light. And our light must be chosen to maintain the level of light the world needs to survive. So we are in covenant training. We are in light out of darkness calling time. We are in training for the special forces of the Creator of the universe operating in the light realm. Nobody said what we're doing would be easy. No one said that the march through the desert of the Middle East in the summertime, in the most dangerous terrain and most angry, through the most angry populations of ethnicities of the world and their ratcheted up anger. Nobody said this would be easy. Nobody said the march through the desert would be a piece of cake. After all, if it was easy, beloved, if it was easy, it would not prepare us for the real life challenges that we will face in our next deployment. And even more than that, if it were easy, it would not provide the resistance necessary to create light and intensify the light we're creating. That would put us at risk individually, and it would also put others at risk, even perhaps the mission itself. See, we are called to be the light of the world. That's why we're having this discussion of light. It's spoken in Isaiah, it's spoken in the Gospels, the story of Mashiach as well as the story of the prophets and the story of the Torah is that we are called to be the light of the world. This is the B'nai Israel calling, to be a Goy Kadosh, the light of the world. We are called to be the light of the world, and the light only appears when energy encounters resistance. It's a scientific principle. It's a metaphysical concept. The idea is light only appears when energy encounters resistance, and the result of that is light begins to be emitted. So that means if there's no resistance, there is no light. And if there's minimal resistance, the light that is produced is minimal. We're not called to produce minimal light or to reflect minimal light. What if there is maximal resistance provided? Well, that depends, beloved. When there is maximal resistance, the result will depend upon how strong the luminescent material is. Let's do our call to worship and get started on this process. The Baraku is the blessing before reading from the Torah. Sing with me if you know it. Otherwise, you can just sit and listen to the Hebrew, wafting over your soul, awakening you to the light. Baraku et Adonai Hamvorak. Baruch Adonai Hamvorak Leolam Vayed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bacharvanu Mikol Ha'amin V'natan lanu et Toratu. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen, and so be it. Open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. For we are just strangers in this earth, so please do not hide your instructions for living from us. And with the Baraku stated, and our hearts awakened, and our minds open, now let us gather around children of the Most High, and let us participate in the Creator's story time. Again, open the Torah scroll, and the concluding words of last week, Parsha Behalotka, Numbers 12:16 said, V'achar nasu ha'am mechatzerot, and afterward the people lifted up from Hatzerot, which is a place in the desert where Miriam's first Mitzorah experienced a place. She became white as snow because of Lashon Hara. V'achar nasu ha'am mechatzerot, and afterward the people lifted up from this place called Hatzerot, Ve'achanu ve'midvar paran, and they pitched camp. They put up tents in the wilderness, the whispering, desolate wasteland called Paran. That opens us up for this week. Parsha Shelach, Lecha, Numbers 13:1 and following. I'll read a little in Hebrew as we open the scroll, humbly and reverently, and speak. And then I'll give you an English translation as best I can come up with on the moment. Here we go. Are you ready? Vayadaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. And then the Holy One spoke to Moshe, and he proclaimed, Shelach lecha anashim, send out, let go, send forth for yourselves men. Vayatauru e'aretz Canaan, and let them tour and surveil and scout the land of Canaan. Asher nani noten livnei Israel, which I am entrusting to the people of Israel in stewardship. Ish echad lemate avotav tishlaku, and you are to send out one man from each paternal tribe, kol nasi bahem, and everyone is to be a prince among them. Wow. Outline of Shelach Lecha, what will we be talking about after we have this message from the Holy One that we can send out, or are to send out, these spies, these scouts, these surveillors who are to go into Eretz Canaan and bring back a report. What does that have to do with darkness and telltale signs of choosing darkness over light? What does it have to do with the heart cry, the telltale sign of whether or not we love the Holy Land, the land of the promise, or whether we prioritize the mission of Bnei Israel and its connection with that land? What does it have to do with that? We'll read and we'll find out as we go, beloved. Are you ready? Well, the first part of the Parsha of Shelach Lecha will be what I call the Yaturu briefing. Yaturu, send out. And tour, or scout, or surveil. The Yaturu briefing, instructions for the mission of the scouts, the spies. And then the second part of the parsha will be the surveillance narrative itself. What did we see? What did the scouts, the surveillors, what did the spies see? What do they record? What does Torah record that they saw at the boundary between darkness and light? Which did they focus on? What did they see? The surveillance narrative. The harlotry of the eyes, zana einaim, and the harlotry of the heart, zana levavi veka, of the heart, the harlotry, the overstimulation fleshly, the cruel desires, the telltale signs that we have seen the darkness and chosen the darkness over the light. The surveillance narrative, what did we see? Then there's the post-mission debriefing. Some call it the reports. Not just what did the spies or the scouts see, but what did they say when they came back? What was in their tongue? What was in their utterance? What valence did their utterance have? Did it have the utterance of light, the valence of light, or did it have the frequency of darkness? The post-mission debriefing, the report, the idolatry, the harlotry of the tongue, the zanuk lashanim, the oral auditory promiscuity, where we have touched darkness and we've spoken darkness rather than light. The fourth part of the parsha, the blindness, the soul darkness of the people when they're poisoned by the light, the consequences and the telltale signs of a penetration, of an encroachment of the darkness. These are the things we see happen next. The thoughts and the self-talk is compromised. The heart is fractured and fragmented. The speech turns negative, and the soul cries out and weeps. This is what happens. And the land is disdained and hated, and we choose darkness over light. And the fifth section of this parsha will be the reaction of Moshe and Aharon to this whole thing. We would hope that Moshe and Aharon would be vessels of light, faithful even in the encroachment of darkness. What do? And we do see they're falling on their faces and they pray. And with that prayer, we see that there's another voice arises. Caleb and Yehoshua, Caleb and Joshua, they're called often in the Western world. Caleb and Yehoshua stand up to exhort. They actually do it twice. They exhort the people. Al tira'u, do not fear them, and do not rebel against the Holy One. Timradu, al timradu, do not rebel against the Holy One. Do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. And then we see that what happens as a result of, or at the end of Caleb and Yahushua's exhortation, is the darkness wins. The darkness of the soul creeps out, and there's a call among the people, goes forth for a heaping up of stones. Some might think of it as stoning Yehoshua and Caleb to death, but that doesn't happen. Instead, the Holy One steps in. That's the next portion of our parsha, the next section of our parsha. And there are 6 elements of that stepping in. First, he manifests his presence to one and all. The boss just entered the room. We have this sense of awe and reverence that step in the room and breaks through the darkness. And the second thing happens is the Holy One reads the indictment. He announces his discipline. He has made his decision. Once you choose darkness over light, the people of the Holy One, the consequences of that are severe, but they're not permanent. We'll find about that and how that works out. Moshe is going to respond to what happened, and he's going to pray, and that the goyim, the nations, the raging nations will hear what happened. So pardon, I pray, your people. And the Holy One will declare his decision. I will indeed pardon. I have indeed pardoned. That's not the issue here. The issue is the disciplines. Do you know what is necessary whenever you hold forth the light? Do you know the disciplines? Do you know the requirements to stand forth the light, and how it affects speech, how it affects thought and self-talk, how it affects how the carrying of the light should affect the heart and the mind and the will and the emotions and the demeanor and the actions and the words. This is the key factor. There is consequences that come with choosing darkness over light. And then the instruction the Holy One gives will be to turn back. Tomorrow, turn back towards the wilderness. Go back into the wilderness, and he's going to give a decree. For 40 years you will wander, and everyone will die in the desert. This generation, but a new generation will arise. And Caleb and Yehoshua, who were faithful, who were wholehearted, will step forward and lead the people, the children, into the land that you disdained, and fulfill the light promise, light carrying promise that you were given. We'll see that this word, this news, this announcement is not received well, and presumptuous ones arise and say, okay, we'll go then, we'll go. No, it's too late for that, but they will rise up and they will go and they will fight the Amalekites and they will fight the Canaanite, and they will lose horribly, and they will be driven back all the way to Hormah. And there will be no choice then of entering the promised land where they were hoping to do so. Not yet, not in this generation, because people chose darkness over light. And then we will see a return to the Korbanot discourse, a sense of recentering by virtue of coming back to the Holy One, making teshuvah, coming back to the Holy One, and going through the protocols to restore relationship and restore and teach the children in a generation to come the ideas of how to get kapur, covering that heals and restores and allows a cocoon-like spiritual environment that one can grow and heal of his wounds and begin to prepare for a new life. We'll hear about the pouring out of the wine with each offering, the pouring out, rather than taking things and indulging them or imbibing them just for pleasure, the idea of spilling the wine for the sake of understanding, appreciation of what we've been given, of the idea of first grain being dedicated to the Holy One rather than used and consumed because we waited so long to see our grain grow in the fields. And the idea of each of our actions is designed to bring about, for other people as well as for ourselves, the Kippur covering of the Holy One. We'll learn then the resumption as we resume the Korbanot discourse about how to be healed of these things that we have adopted, how a generation can rise up after us that will not have to bear the consequences at a certain time at least of this choosing of light, of darkness over light. And then we'll have a stunning narrative. The parsha will get close to the end and we'll have the stunning narrative of the gathering man, or the Sabbath desecrator. A man is found in our midst after all this resumption and recentering and reconnection with the Holy One. One man is found in our midst, totally desecrating the Sabbath, totally ignoring the instructions of the Holy One to cease from labor on that day and to seek him and to embrace his holiness and his blessing that day. And he's out instead gathering sticks. What kind of crisis, what kind of choice of darkness over light? Why did he choose the darkness over light? The telltale sign is the desecration of the Sabbath. So the gathering man is found, and instead of stoning him off the top of a cuff, or just judging him, we bring him, set him apart, and the Holy One is asked and inquired, what should we do with this particular Sabbath desecrator? Well, there's an answer is given, but understand the key is the process it went through to ask the Holy One what to do with this Sabbath desecrator. And finally, the conclusion of the parsha will be the tzitzit discourse, the tassels on the corners of our garments, fringes. Now, what is these things? And he says he gives us these things so that we will not tour, we will not spy, we will not scout, we will not surrender to our eyes, the harlotry of our eyes, to look at things that are outside of our purview as a covenant, that are outside of the realm of light and in the realm of darkness. We won't look at those things because we'll remember when we see the tzitzit, the fringes, the tassels on the corners of our garments. And we will remember to make and build and bring into the world all the mitzvot, all the instructions of the Holy One, as he said, instead of choosing what our hearts or our eyes might desire. And we will become then Kedoshim Lecha, these holy ones of our God. Well, let's kind of talk for a little bit then about the epicenter and the bookends of this parsha. If you want to understand the deeper wisdom of a parsha, don't get too caught up with the details. You need to know and read the details and understand. But if you want to get the deeper wisdom of the Torah and see it in its greater perspective and the greater messages that are being told, the grandfather's reason for his stories that he's telling about who we are, then you have to look at the epicenter, the very middle of the parsha, and then look at the bookends, one on the front, one on the end. So at the epicenter of this parsha is Numbers 14, 29 through 34. I call it the epic generational fail narrative. The narrative of an epic generational fail, and that fail being to choose darkness over light, choose the thoughts of darkness over the thoughts of light, choose the words, the speech, the declarations of darkness over the declarations of light, choose the emotions of darkness over the emotions of light, and choose the ways and the actions of darkness over the ways of light. Well, and the actions of light. Well, at the epicenter of this parsha is this epic generational fail narrative. And what the Holy One says in the middle of that is, the carcasses of you who have complained against me, telltale sign of choosing the darkness over the light. Number one, the carcasses of those of you who have complained against me. That's from one, complaining against the Holy One and against his messengers. The carcasses of those who have complained against me will fall in this wilderness, he says. All of you who were mustered according to your entire host from 20 years old and above, except for Caleb ben Yefunah and Yehoshua ben Nun, you will by no means enter the land. So you will fall in the wilderness. You will by no means enter the land that I swore I would make you dwell in. But there is a caveat. But your little ones, whom you said would be victims, you feared would be victims, you let your darkness encroach upon you and your thoughts and your vain imaginations, and you declared they would become victims of the Canaanites and the Amorites and the Amalekites, and they would be tortured and killed. That is what you said in your vain imaginations and your conspiracy, a mindset of the darkness thoughts and speech. Those little ones whom you said would be victims, I will bring in, the Holy One says, and I will make sure they know the land that you despised and rejected. Telltale sign, again, consequences if you reject and despise the land of Israel and the connection of the children of Israel to it, you will bear the telltale signs and the consequences of the darkness encroachment. And he goes further, the Holy One does in this epicenter passage, Numbers 14, 29 through 24. He says, your sons, your children will be Ra'im Bamidbar, shepherds of the desert. Not you will be the shepherds. Your sons will rise up in your place and become shepherds of the desert. Ra'im Bamidbar, for 40 years. And they will carry on your behalf your Zanayakim, your Zanot, your corruptions, your adulteries with your eyes, and your adulteries with your hearts, and your adulteries with your speech, until your carcasses are all consumed in the wilderness. According to the number of days that you scouted and spied and surveilled the land, 40 days will turn to 40 years in the wilderness. Well, that's the epicenter passage. Wow. Understand the consequences of choosing darkness over light, and the things of darkness, and the speech of darkness, and the thoughts of darkness, and the ways of darkness over the ways of light. Now, we said the secrets of the secret wisdom, the deeper wisdom of the parsha is always found in the epicenter and in the bookends. So what are the two bookends? What's at the beginning? I call this what's at the beginning and at the end. I summarized it by saying the problem with tourism. Tour, the Hebrew word tour, is what we call spies, or spying, or surveilling. Tour, it means to have a curious, voyeuristic approach of looking at something, looking into the darkness, and not knowing where your eyes are supposed to stop, and not knowing where your mind and your thoughts are supposed to stop, and make choices of light, not knowing where your lips and your speech and your utterance is supposed to stop and speak only things of light, not knowing where the lines are, not caring where the lines are as to what you're to do and how you're to act, what you're to focus on. Tour, the problem with tourism at the bookends. The beginning, chapter 13, verse 2, the Holy One says, Shelach Lecha anashim vayaturu. That's the tour. Vayashturu et haaretz kana. Send out for yourselves men that will spy, that will tour, that will surveil, that will scout out Eretz Canaan, the land of Canaan. And then the conclusion at chapter 15, verse 39, the Holy One's going to talk about these tzitzit, these tassels on the corner of our garment, these fringes we're to look at to remember things. He says, Lo toturu, that you will not tour, that you will not go scouting, that you will not go spying, that you will not get curious about and get voyeuristic in your approach to the things of the darkness. Lo taturu akare lebevkim, the things of your heart, the things of your heart, and when it's shrouded in darkness, covet. Ve'akare enekim, or the things that your eyes pursue and can't get out of your thought processes or your vision. So welcome to the week of the dark encroachment, the darkness intrusion. Welcome to Kadesh Barnea and the Chet HaMeraglim, the sin of the spies narrative. Well, as we began the Parsha, as we now think about the actual narrative, we start by knowing that we have faced environmental traumas. We've taken a few hits. We're out in the desert. It's hot. The summer has begun. The temperatures have risen. The tensions have risen with them. We've taken a few hits, and we've gotten kind of loose with our tongues. We begin to think negative thoughts and speak negative things. We begin to speak Lashon Hara. We begin the telltale signs of choosing darkness over light. We've wobbled significantly in our dedication to the Holy One. We are still, though, in mission forward mode as we begin this parsha. We're going in the direction of the Holy Land and the calling out of darkness into glorious light. We're going with the covenant, even though we're not altogether happy about it, as virtue of what we've been reading in the previous parsha. So that's how it begins. And we have faced sensual and sensitive and sentimental beasts within us. They've come out. We're going to realize we've got stuff in us still after Egypt, even after Sinai. We are here, though we're still moving with the cloud of the presence. We're still choosing light, though it's beginning harder and harder. The resistance is getting greater and greater to choose the light. And now it's time in Parsha Shelach Lecha for the ultimate challenges of the flock. The Get Salamavet, the valley of the shadow of death, and the Shalkun Neged Zuri, the table set in the presence of our enemies, will take place. Our destination, our scene, our setting for this Parsha is Kadesh Barnea, the border city of the Promised Land. This is the threshold from which we should enter the Promised Land. It's right on the other side. If we could let the Holy One pick us up and carry us like a bride over this Kadesh Barnea threshold, it would be like a marriage when the husband, the bridegroom, takes the bride over the threshold into the home. The border city of the Promised Land, we're right on the cusp of entering into our destiny, of the place where we can carry the light to make it shine the greatest. And it's near Ber Lahoiroi, the place where Yitzhak and Rivka lived in their newlywed years. It's a place of honeymoon type of atmosphere. It's the farthest point to the south of Eretz Yisrael that was visited by Abraham without going to Egypt. The farthest point in the south that was visited and occupied and sojourned in by Abraham, Genesis 20, verse 1. What a place to come. We have marched through the desert. We're on the cusp of entering the Promised Land. We're so close to home. But are we ready for this? Are we ready, beloved? Are you ready for what's coming next? And the basic narrative is that from what we expected to be our last camping place of the wilderness march, from Kadesh Barnea, Moshe is going to send out a team of 12 spies to scout out the land, to be tourists, to tour, to surveil. And these spies will tour the land for 40 days. They'll go up from the south of Kadesh Barnea all the way into the hill country, through the valleys, through the orchards and the fields. It's a time of the ripening of grapes, and they will see the land's goodness. And when the spy delegation returns to camp, shocking, what comes out of their mouth, the 10-member majority, will give the most negative, fear-filled, demoralizing report they could give. They don't let the light color their speech. They speak the words and the meaning and carry the message of darkness. They described the land they had just seen, which was so fruitful and beautiful, as an impenetrable fortress inhabited by giants, fearsome giants, the sons of Anak. They described the land itself as a land that consumes its inhabitants. Yehoshua and Caleb can't believe their ears. They went to the same place these other people went to. They respond with a minority report. Says, the giants, even the Amorites and the Amalekites, they're all just bread for us. But the fear engendered by the majority report gripped the people, and they turned on Yehoshua and Caleb, and they attacked them, and they intended to set up stones against them. Well, in utter panic, the people began to indulge vain imaginations. They had dark thoughts, darkened understanding about what going into the land would look like and mean, and what it would cost them and would result in happening to their children. They began to have these terror attacks and terror gripping events. And they actually asked the Holy One to die in the desert or go back to Egypt. And they even decided to select a new leader beside Moshe and Aaron and go take them back to Egypt, to the land of the pharaohs and the pyramids and the persecutions and the imprisonments, rather than go into the land. Go into the place the Holy One said was the most precious place on earth, the place flowing with milk and honey, prepared for them, for the launching pad, for the invasion of the earth and the bringing of the heavens to the earth. The will of the heavens, the ways of the heavens, the kingdom of heaven to earth. That was what this land was supposed to be and what they were calling was to do, but they instead asked to die in the desert or go back to Egypt rather than go into the land and face the giants. They devalued the land. They overvalued their fear of the giants. They then, before they could stone Yehoshua and Caleb, the Holy One intervened. Blessed be his name. He stopped the stoning of the two faithful witnesses. He granted what the people had been asking for, though. They had asked that they to be able to die in the desert, and he decreed that they would indeed do so. After spending the next 40 years wandering around the desert, they would indeed die there. Every man, every one that had done what they did, made the choice of the darkness over the light. But the Holy One also promised. There's always a promise of blessing at the end of every sentence of every discipline. He had promised that their offspring, the offspring of their people, would go into the land in their stead and would do exactly what they refused to do. The next morning, in the light of day, the people realized they had made a terrible mistake. They told Moshe they would go into the land after all. Wouldn't you? But it was too late. Moshe told them it was too late. And the Holy One's decree was sealed and final. Well, some of the host chose to go out to war against the Amorites and the Amalekites anyway. But as the Holy One had told Moshe would happen, and as Moshe had predicted, the ill-fated, half-hearted campaign failed miserably and ended disastrously. The armies of the enemies beat the conflicted host of Bnei Israel soundly and drove the covenant people back into the badlands of the wilderness of Paran. Well, we come to the point of reading this narrative, listening to this story. The great storyteller of Torah is telling us, we say, what are we supposed to learn from this? What do you know, Holy One, that we don't? We who live on the earth, we who live amongst the raging nations, we who deal with flesh and pseudo-intellectual trials every day, we who get caught up in things, what do you know that we don't, that we need to know? What are the lessons, the essential lessons of light bearers you need to teach us? Well, the Holy One knows what's coming. He knows that the darkness will indeed test the light. He knows that we're going to have to learn to displace our fear of the dragon and the darkness and his demons. To displace those things with the love we have for him and the passion we have for his grand plan and the land that he promises to give us. And we have to learn to deal with not just the imminent giants in the land problem, but to every other challenge of life we will ever face in this life, in this world. The Holy One knows, you see, that not just the giants in the land are out there. There are 5 pagan warlords waiting for us as well if we go a different direction. The Holy One knows that we are going to have to face 5 pagan warlords, each one with a haughty attitude and each one with a powerful army and a great hatred of us in their heart. He knows that there's a larger-than-life sorcerer named Balaam who waits for us, who we will have to face, and we will have to overcome before we can cross the threshold of the kingdom beachhead from the east, from a different direction. He knows what we're about to face, so he has lessons he wants to teach us. He wants us to learn how to understand the importance of the calling and the covenant and what it requires of us in regard to our thoughts and our self-talk, in regards to our speech and what we will let come out of our mouths, in regard to our passions and our hearts and what we let our eyes look at and stare upon and fixate on, and what we will let our hands do and our places we'll let our feet go. Those are all require us to choose the light in every instance. Knowing the daunting challenges that we are destined to face, beloved, in the course of walking out our mission, the Holy One has allowed us to be in the wilderness and to be tempted while there and tested while there. And yes, as we learned this week, to be humbled therein. We're going to be poked and probed and irritated in every area of the 5 holes of our soul that exist by virtue of our bondage in Egypt and our contact with the Ra, Shekat, and Hamas infected world and the raging nations. The Holy One knows that what does not kill us out here in the desert will make us stronger for the next fight and will provide object lessons for our children and our children's children to follow. So what can we make of what we read in Parsha Shelach Lecha? What can we take away from it? What can we carry with us? And I start with a question. I would start the answer to that inquiry with a question of, and the question is, if the Holy One were speaking to you and saying, "Do you see what I see?" When you look at other people in the raging nations, "Do you see what I see?" The Holy One would ask you. When you look at the lands of Israel versus the lands of the other countries, the other nations, the other geographical regions of the earth, "Do you see what I see?" The Holy One would ask you. When you listen to the speech of other people, or you listen to the words coming out of your own mouth, "Do you hear what I hear?" The Holy One would ask you. Do you hear what I hear coming out of your mouth or coming out of... Can you recognize the telltale signs where darkness has encroached and light has receded? Report and tone, tattletale on vision or the lack thereof. The tone of your voice and the sound of your words and the ways in which you, attitudes in which you maintain, those are indeed the things that tattletale on whether you've made a choice over the light or you made a choice of the darkness. Let's get back into the text just for a few seconds and pick up this story. Vayishlach otam Moshe b'midbar Paran. Thus Moshe sent them out from the wilderness of Paran. This is talking about the spies, the 12 spies. Al pi Adonai, by the mouth, the lips, the direction of the Holy One. Kulam anashim ashe b'nei Israel hema. And all of them were men who were heads of Bnei Israel. Ve'ele shmam tam. And they were all, these were their names, and the names were given to us in the Torah. There are 12 names, but the shemot, the names, are not the critical factor. The critical factor is, do you understand that these were leaders? Sometimes even our leaders begin to speak in tones and with words of darkness. Sometimes even our leaders let their thoughts and their self-talk get caught up in this negativity. As a matter of fact, 10 out of 12, 5 out of 6, if you want to use a little mathematical change this there, 5 out of 6 of leaders will usually get caught up in darkness thoughts, darkened understanding. The darkness of the tongue will come forth out of their mouth. They will not speak the words, the revelation, the oracles of the Holy One, the things that bring light into the world and hope into the world. They will start bringing negativity into the world. Even the leaders, 5 of the 6 of the leaders of our people forever. This is the nature of the encroachment of the darkness. And the calling of the people of the Holy One is to resist and follow the ways of Yehoshua and Caleb and cling to the language and the thoughts and the ways of the light. Well, in the desert, in the season of the extreme heat, the fiery trials of the summer, It's easy to lose the voice of the bridegroom in the din of many voices of another. Voices of the flesh within, voices of the pseudo-intellect of the brain and mind and will, voices of the desert, voices of the nations, voices of the mockers, voices of the demons of the world. Yes, voices of discontent, voices that spawn fear or hate or sense of resentment, expressions of offense and outrage. These are the telltale signs. Discontent and complaint and murmuring, fear-mongering, panic, terror, expressions of offense and outrage and resentment, attitudes operating opinions, spouting opinions that don't have any basis in the Torah, that are based in some theory or some historical viewpoint or some spin that are put on the ways of life, the things of the earth, attitudes and opinions spouted from the off the cuff, but not out of the Torah. You see telltale signs of the darkness, intrusion, and encroachment are demagogues rising up and spinning their talking points and being chosen. Some choose one demagogue, some choose another demagogue. They may say totally different things, but the fact that they're a powerful speaker, they can spin darkness and propaganda into an acceptable tone. That's the ways that we're being taught to tell the telltale signs of whether someone's walking in light or darkness. Are they just a demagogue, spewing talking points, spinning events and giving propaganda? Or are they providing revelation from the Torah and from the very throne room of the heavens? Just telltale signs of darkness versus light. Are people speaking out of hidden agendas or axes to grind, as opposed to speaking out of the mission and the calling of the Holy One, out of darkness into his glorious light, and out of the covenant plan and protocol? Are people expressing differences of perspective, or are they rebelling against the Holy One? Are they clashing in ideology and personality, or are they unifying under the flag and the banner of the kingdom of heaven, no matter what individual differences of opinion or attitude or approach we might have? Are people saber rattling or fear-mongering among us, as opposed to asking, what does the Holy One say and what is in his Torah? These are the keys, separating those who choose the darkness from those who choose the light. Well, we have some issues that we'll have to deal with in the desert. And some will call this spiritual warfare. I think the title, the name is probably vastly overused. But nevertheless, it is a form of something that we would think of as spiritual warfare. What happens in the desert? The sound of the voices of darkness versus the voices of light. The thoughts and the mindset. These are all spiritual warfare issues. Psycho-spiritual targeting of the mind and of the will, the emotions, and of the tongue by spirits of uncleanness. And these targeted attacks by these spirits are designed to sabotage our critical alignment of neshama in charge over nephesh, following in line, and basar, our flesh, following after that. The spirit controls the soul, but controls the body and mind. That's the way it's supposed to be. And so the spiritual warfare, the spiritual targeting by spirits is aimed at disrupting the critical alignment and balance of neshama, nephesh, and basar, making the nephesh, the will, the mind, and emotions take charge, or making the flesh and its appetites and urges take control and push the neshama out of the picture. So we get these issues. The issue is, will you stay balanced according to and in alignment according to the Holy One's plan while we're in the desert? When light and darkness meet and encroach, will you choose the light and stay in balance? Neshama in charge, nephesh underneath it, and basar following behind. Well, area of imbalance number one that we may face is areas where we are already under stress. Chronic stress in certain situations or acute stress, those are vulnerable points where the spiritual targeting, the psycho-spiritual targeting by spirits of Tuma will enter in. Try to find a place where we're already under stress, a relationship point, a personal self-image point, a sense of purpose or lack thereof point, a place where we're already under stress. when you find those places, when you understand your own places, you know that you will be dealing with psycho-spiritual targeting by spirits of Tuma. And we learn to choose at every interval, choose the light. Always choose the light in the way of thought. Always choose the light in the way of speech. Always choose the light in the way of emotion. Always choose the light in the way of behaviors. Choose those things. The second area of strategic imbalance, we'll have to deal with these spiritual warfare techniques, this psycho-spiritual targeting by spirits of Tama, is our pre-programmed trigger points. We have been pre-programmed by Egypt, or by the bondage of the raging nations, by our own personal experiences in the womb all the way through life. We have been pre-programmed with trigger points, vulnerable points, tender points where if they just push it, or if just a scent comes into our smell, or if a sound comes into our ears, a tone of voice is raised, a person's face is seen before us, then we're triggered. Well, you've seen something like that happen in the political realm. Now there's a trigger point of just a person's face and his hair and his skin color, and those things are made to be trigger points for targeted a bunch of people who have chosen to walk in darkness over light. And the same thing holds true for the other side of this political divide. They find someone that they have the same kind of trigger point against. Well, the strategic imbalance area number 2 then is trigger points that are pre-programmed into us. Those are areas we'll have to deal with: spiritual warfare, psycho-spiritual targeting by spirits of uncleanness, where we're in danger of losing our alignment of neshama, nefesh, and basar. And the third area of spiritual imbalance where we're vulnerable is tender, exposed pressure points, places where we're already bleeding, so to speak, places where we're already having pain and struggles and difficulty, and the Holy One knows where those are, and so does the adversary. And that means that we, in each of these areas, we have tipping points and breaking points as well. Well, beloved, my time with you has come to about an end. I want to talk to you just a little bit more, and we'll bid you farewell for the day. Let you go to your own groups or your own private studies to study the Torah. I want to ask you, have you seen in your own life or those around you the telltale signs that people are choosing darkness over light, that people have run away from the light? Now, I've told you what they are. You can go back and listen to this discussion if you wish to, and pick them again and write down notes, because these are the areas that are very important. There are not just telltale signs, though. There are consequences. For people of the covenant, we don't have the ability just to wander through and blunder through life. People of the covenant, people of the calling out of darkness into light, people of the Goy Kadosh manifestation and mission, these people, we aren't just unable just to believe certain doctrines and go to certain meetings and think we're okay. We have consequences for ourselves, our family, and for the world if we do not do what's need to be done, if we do not choose the light at every interval, or at least choose the light path that leads us back into the light after we've led away. These are the things we need to learn. Beloved, it's time for me to leave you. If you want to get more information about Parsha Shelach Lecha, feel free to go to the archives at biblicallifestylecenter.org. It's biblicallifestylecenter.org, our website. We have a section under the Rabbi's Sons page on that website that has an archives of all the past studies. There are 6 studies for Parsha Shelach Lecha, as every other Parsha of the Torah. I encourage you to go to those. While you're there, if you can, we would very much appreciate a little assistance in helping provide the cost of these things by providing, hit a donate button and whatever the Holy One might allow you to give. If you've been blessed by this discussion or others, please give something to help us defray the costs that we have. Well, until next time, Shabbat Shalom. See you next week.